On this edition of Native Report, we visit the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa to witness a dedication of an eagle's nest. We learn how the labeling of wild rice can protect the traditional food staple. And we meet Berens, who is responsible for the music you hear on our program each and every week. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Metawakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, the Blandin Foundation, and the Grotto Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacey Thunder. There is no more powerful symbol for many nations across Indian country and the United States as the bald eagle. A special dedication of an eagle's nest on the Bois Forte Reservation is the result of years of planning between the reservation, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and a privately owned mining company.
The eagle to our people is right on the borderline of us, I suppose, and person, and the supernatural world. I heard some of them say that they cross over sometimes into the spirit world and they come back, and that's how we relay our messages. Like if we're talking to the spirits or something, he's one of the main ones that's always the recipient of all of our tobacco and the food offerings and the bagichigan. Bagichigan is the offerings, like a blanket and stuff like that.
Smoke from a fire pit rose into a clouded sky on this late spring day as the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa celebrated a very special occasion.
Today we had the dedication of the Eagle's Nest. The Eagle's Nest was a collaboration between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Minorca Mine, and the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa here in northern Minnesota. And what we did is accepted this gift on behalf of Minorca Mine, and what happened earlier was they were going to expand the water basin at Minorca Mine, and they contacted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who in turn contacted the band. And collectively, we came up with this event today to kind of dedicate this to the people of northern Minnesota and to all people. It represents the Bois Forte Nation, also represents the United States government, and it represents courage and wisdom and hope and opportunity and everything that a country could need or a nation could want.
Minorca Mining was expanding on the land the Eagle's Nest was located, and a representative from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service contacted Rosemary Berens with a unique opportunity.
Part of this expansion was to build up the sides of a dike and flood it with water, and this Eagle's Nest was in that area, and she said the water would come up right to the bottom of the nest or maybe right into the nest, and she was wondering if the Heritage Center and the Bois Forte Band would be willing to take this. If we could work it out with Minorca Mine, the Fish and Wildlife, if we would be interested. And of course I said yes. In this situation, I talked to both the tribal council and the elders from our community and asked them if it would be okay to do this. You know, would it be all right to bring that Eagle's Nest here, or did we want to leave it there and let whatever happen to it? And everyone that I talked to, spiritual advisors, elders, everyone said that we should bring it here and preserve it.
Bois Forte band members, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and mining personnel cut the tree 4 feet below the nest and 2 feet above it and moved it, nest and all.
This nest was considered a sitting nest or a breeding nest, that the eagles built it and then they would come and sit there, or else they would come and they would breed there. And a lot of people think that eagles only breed in the air when they're coming down, but they don't. They do breed on special nests that they built just for this type of thing. So after that we came back and just kind of waited for everything to fall together. And between the 3 entities, as Minorca Mine, Fish and Wildlife, and Bois Forte, we got everything together. We contacted Chris Anderson from J&A Logging to come over and remove the nest and transport it here.
As part of the dedication, a pipe ceremony was performed for the nest and the eagles.
This effort was a great example of collaboration between government and private industry. We tip our hat to our stellar middle mine, Minorca Mine, for the responsible way they operate, respecting our natural resources. All of those attributes of the eagle, have been with us for a long time, and hopefully that'll carry us into the future. As we take a different way of doing things, we must always remember the past. And although we have gaming development and a golf course and a marina here just behind us, we always respect the Heritage Center because it encompasses everything that we have to remember when we move forward.
The nest most likely won't be used by mating eagles, but as reservation elders noted, if by removing the nest is what preserves it, then it was the right thing to do.
I was raised at Nett Lake and was told by many people and many elders, don't interfere with nature, no matter how cruel it seems to be. Don't interject yourself there, because that is not what the Creator intended. Nature does everything for a purpose. And this was not a natural act. This was a man-made act that was going to happen. It was people who were going to be raising the water up, not the Creator, not the rains, but people. And it was at that point that the elders said, if this nest can be preserved, if we can bring it to our reservation and preserve it, then this is what needs to be done. After we got done with our ceremony and they actually started taking the tree down step by step, the eagle came by and he just soared all the way around, and he turned and he soared all the way back. And one of the men from the logging company came over and told me, he said, I think that eagle is angry because we're taking this down. And I said, no, I believe it's just the contrary. I believe that he is coming to take the gifts that we offered him and the food and the tobacco that we offered him and giving us his blessing.
Did you know the Ojibwe call wild rice monomen? Wild rice is high in protein, the amino acid lysine, and dietary fiber. It does not contain gluten and is a good source of the minerals potassium, phosphorus, and the vitamins thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. Northern wild rice is an annual plant native to the Great Lakes region of North America. Monomen grows in the aquatic areas of the boreal forest regions of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and in the U.S. in northern states in the Great Lakes region. It is the state grain of Minnesota. In the traditional way, it is harvested with a canoe. One person knocks rice into the canoe with 2 small knockers or flails. The other person pushes the canoe with a pole or paddles. For the Ojibwe, monomen is a sacred part of their culture.
Natural wild rice grows only in certain regions across Indian country and is very different than what is known as cultivated or paddy rice. There is a movement underway for labeling laws to inform consumers if rice is natural or cultivated.
Near the middle of August, Anishinaabe in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota will begin harvesting wild rice, or monomen, a traditional food staple and more recently a source of income.
People meet at the landings when the beds are open, and of course now with the current state law on state managed rice beds, it's be August 15th is the time. August 15th or later you can harvest rice that's not green, in other words rice that's ripe. And on the reservations and in some of the other rice beds off reservation that would be managed or co-managed by the tribes, and there are rice committees that determine when the rice is open and what hours. People meet, when the rice is open at a good rice bed, you'll see several, if not 20, 30, 40 canoes show up at a landing.
Most of the Indian people that camped here years ago, they came and stayed right on through whitefish fishing season. And they did trapping at the same time. So it was pretty much a cultural thing in the fall. Once they came, they stayed. If they left, it was just to go buy school clothes for the kids, from making money from ricing. Then they came back to do fish and stuff.
Traditionally harvested monomen is natural and grows in the wild as opposed to bog cultivated or what is known as paddy rice.
Natural bed wild rice is grown in the northern climates of northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and southern Canada. And a good share of what comes out of the United States, probably about 70% of the natural bed wild rice comes from Minnesota. It is so prevalent here because of that area, because of the water conditions and the weather conditions. It is our state grain. I mean, that's the state grain of Minnesota. So it's very big in Minnesota. Other states have some as well. As I mentioned, northern Wisconsin has some, and so does northern Michigan. But we have a predominance of natural bed wild rice. We also have paddy rice, which is grown in like bogs, just like cranberry bogs, and it's commercially grown. And Red Lake has paddy rice and several others. Paddy rice is probably about, I think overall, the biggest producer of paddy rice is the state of California. They produce about 8.5 million pounds of paddy rice versus our maybe 500,000 pounds of natural bed rice, which is collected and with them paddling through with canoes and things like this, like my grandma and I used to do when I was a kid. So the natural bed, or the natural bed wild rice that we're talking about, is a unique food, not only a sacred food for us, our Chippewa families, but also a form of revenue for our Chippewa families.
In Minnesota, by law, if there is 51% paddy rice mixed with monomen, it must be labeled as cultivated.
We have a labeling law in place in the state of Minnesota. It's been here since, I believe, '84, for the labeling of wild rice, natural bed wild rice versus cultivated paddy rice. And there's been an effort for a number of years now to try and take the state Minnesota's law for truth in labeling of natural bed rice to the federal level, and that's an ongoing process. And we believe we have some folks that are willing to listen to us at the federal level now.
It's the same issue that the folks in France, the wine folks, had for years with the Bordeaux region of wine, and the Champagne region in France. People were selling red wines and white wines as champagnes or Bordeaux, and they weren't. Finally, the Bordeaux region folks said, hey, listen, you can't be calling your red wine Bordeaux wine unless it's grown and bottled here in the Bordeaux region of France. And those are things that I think should be the same with our labeling with wild rice.
Cultivated rice is often cheaper than hand-picked monomen, thus impacting the marketers of natural wild rice.
There's a commercial activity around natural bed rice, as there is with paddy rice. And most folks that know rice attribute that natural bed rice has a little bit better quality to it in the long run. And we believe that it can command a higher premium than paddy rice. So there are commercial issues there.
When I was a kid, we'd be up there, and I had a little rice business when I was going to high school and selling wild rice down here in the Twin Cities to restaurants like Charlie's and the Blue Horse and places like this, just a little added business. And that was when wild rice was probably about $7, $8 a pound. Now wild rice is down to, I think it's about $4.50, $5 a pound at best, primarily because of the dumping of other rice from California called wild rice onto the market, which is paddy rice.
There are more pressing issues that command the legislators' attention than the labeling of cultivated rice, but there is a growing body of support.
I'm encouraged because we've got folks that are now that are representing us in Congress and senators, and I understand, I haven't talked to the fellow, but I think our new senator, Al Franken's interested in this issue. That's a plus, and I think he's on the Senate Ag Committee and Indian Affairs Committee. Indian Affairs Committee isn't going to do much, I think, on this, but the Ag Committee is going to have to look at it, and so those are all pluses. But if we start getting people now at that federal level recognizing this issue, other than just Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan folks, I think that's going to be very helpful.
We've had some communications, and I say this now because I'm in my capacity with the Leech Lake Tribe. I do environmental policy work, and this is part of the work that I am engaged in working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they seem quite amenable to the situation we've described to them, and we're researching whether we need a status change in the law. Do we actually need to have some language introduced through the House and Senate, or is there a venue in existing truth and labeling laws? So we're researching that.
The eagle, he's tied into us, in our everyday, every moment that we're here, that we travel about, wherever we may be. We may be in town, we may be way out in the bush, out in the country, we might be home. There's a lot of times that when we're doing ceremonies at home, and we do the offering, and one of the first beings that flies over, everybody says, "Look, there's the eagle." I said, "Yep, be adapinige," which means he has come to accept our offering of tobacco and food and mabagichigan.
After hearing the song of a loon echoing across a lake, Darren Moose answered the loon's calls with a flute. He said at that moment something inside him had awakened, and he's been writing and recording music because of this.
Darren Moose Sr. is a self-taught musician and composer, recording under the name Ogema Benez, Chief Thunderbird in Ojibwe.
I've been playing flute since 1993. It happened overnight. One morning when I decided to take a step outside for a little while, and I had a flute with me at the time, and I grabbed it, picked it up, and went outside, and next thing I know, I hear singing off into a distance on Mille Lacs Lake, and it was a very early morning, and the mist was just hovering over the lake, and birds weren't not even chirping yet. It was that early. And all of a sudden I heard singing. And I had no idea where that singing was coming from, so I just closed my eyes and I just started listening. And then the next thing I know, I found myself looking out into the far distance of the lake there, and I could see a little black dot out there. And I pretty much figured out that was a loon. So I turned around and looked at that flute there, which I had no idea how to play or how to use or anything like that. So I just thought maybe I'd try and mimic that. And at the same time, I'm looking at the sunrise. The sun was just barely coming out, and then you can see the moon on one side, so I can see day and night together. And as soon as I started playing it, I closed my eyes or like that, and all of a sudden, I felt like something lifted from me and traveled through me and through that flute, and it was like a whole nother language. It seemed like the animals could understand you. It was just quite of a spiritual experience.
Moose discovered some flutes have warmer tones than others, depending upon the wood they're made out of. He also learned the finger holes have special meaning.
They basically represent everything in life as we know it today. We have our fish, everything that's underwater. This one here represents all of our animals above water, walking on the ground, our four-legged, brothers and sisters, and ones that crawl. This one here represents us as human beings, not necessarily just native people, but the sacred four colors of the earth, black, red, yellow, white, all people. This next one here is a half note on this particular flute anyway. This represents what I call the bad spirit. You have to represent everything in life, good or bad, right or wrong. I don't necessarily play it all the time, but on occasion, on some of my songs that I play, I may play that note once or twice or so. And one above that one represents all of our feathered friends, all the birds, everything that flies. And the reason being is that, particularly the eagle, they're the only ones that can get closer to the Creator, which is this hole right here. Every flute is different. There's not one flute that is the same as the next. They may almost sound identical, but they are still different, whether it's by shape, tone, warmth, the resonance that comes from it. They're all different.
Ogema Benez recorded his first album accompanied by a guitarist. Currently, he is working on a new release with keyboardist Adam Basie.
I met Darren through a fundraiser that took place in my hometown for the Native Arts, which was a program through the public school that was taking place. And his talents were used for that event, and I got a chance to accompany him for that event as well. I was really new to the whole idea of any sort of Native perspective on music or education, so it really interested me because I do have a tremendous amount of respect for the Native culture. So to be able to be part of that and learn different things about the Native culture really does interest me. The flute itself has a voice to itself. My job as an accompanied player to that is to really give a foundation behind that lets that voice be heard, explore things, and feel comfortable to step outside of a normal rhythm, cadence, melody into something that can really just have wings, I guess.
A military veteran who fought in the First Gulf War, Ogema Benez describes his music as a form of self-therapy.
It takes me away from the reality of the experiences that I've had to encounter, during my time in service. It allows me to kind of escape a little bit and trying to help me heal. I'm healing myself actually sometimes. I feel it allows me to leave for a while, and just find a little bit of peace in my own mind, because not a day goes by that I don't think about all the things that I've been through. I was given this gift of playing flute music, I feel, as a way of helping people in the healing process, and in particular with the heart. And that's how I play it, with the heart, and that's the only way I can play it.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org. Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors in Indian Country. I'm Stacey Thunder. See you next time on Native Report.
Stacey Thunder is an enrolled member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation. And Tad Johnson is an enrolled member of the Boys Forte Band of Ojibwe and is Solicitor General for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, the Blandin Foundation, and the Grotto Foundation.
Native Report.
Stacey Thunder is an enrolled member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation. And Tad Johnson is an enrolled member of the Boys Forte Band of Ojibwe and is Solicitor General for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, the Blandin Foundation, and the Grotto Foundation. Blandin Foundation and the Grotto Foundation.